Hey there, GCF. Here are three things to keep in mind as we prepare to head into worship this weekend. First, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, March 28th, we're gathering at 10 a.m. outside the Main Street campus to break up into teams to stop, pray, and walk. And we'll pinpoint certain neighborhoods, break up into smaller teams of 3, and then walk through those neighborhoods. And we're going to pray briefly on the street side or the sidewalk for each of those homes. And then we're going to leave a hanger on the door that we have walked through the neighborhood and that we have prayed for them. You know, stop, pray, and walk may well provide us with a few opportunities to interact with folks one-on-one. But more than that, it's a real challenge for us to believe in the power of prayer as we go out. That when we speak blessings over a home or we ask God to bless a home, He really does begin to move within that home and within that family. So the last time we did this, we had about 12 folks come out and we broke into 3 teams. And I'm hoping that we'll have around 15 to 18 folks this time to add a couple more teams and a couple more neighborhoods to what we covered the last time. And we're going to repeat Stop, Walk, and Pray in those same neighborhoods on Saturday, April 3rd at 10 a.m. But that day, we'll leave a door hanger that invites folks to join us in Easter worship that night at 6 p.m. or at the online campus. And that brings me to the second thing I want to talk about this week, and that is Easter weekend itself. Several folks have asked me about potential overcrowding if we invite folks to worship on Easter weekend. And guys, this is a really tough call to make. It's a balance between not making people sick, but also remembering that the preaching of the gospel is, in and of itself, an eternal matter. It is the difference between life and death for those who don't know Jesus. And so I want to encourage you to bring to church with you on Easter weekend any family members you may have who are visiting with you. And seriously, if the Lord has placed on your heart any person or people that you're supposed to invite to Easter worship, you should definitely do that, whether it be at in-person worship or online worship. Now, all of that taken into consideration, beyond our Stop, Pray, and Walk event on Saturday the 3rd, which hits a limited number of homes, we're not doing a major sort of advertising blitz for Easter worship this year. Of course, during Easter worship, masks will still be required, and I'm going to say more about COVID and masks in just a few minutes. I do know that being apart on Easter Sunday last year was one of the hardest times of the last 13 months for many of you. And so to celebrate being together again this year in person for Easter worship, we're hoping to have a couple of food trucks available outside prior to Easter worship on Saturday, April 3rd, so we can fellowship together a little bit. We'll also be set up to take Easter pictures of couples and families on Easter weekend, or singles. And if you're single and you want to pick with one of your pastors for Easter, I'm sure Ronjo or Penny or Kyle would be glad to join you. I know I'm game to jump in the picture with you. Hey, the trucks are going to be set up outside and eating is going to take place outside. And since we have less green space for tossing out blankets on this property, whereas we did at the Tab, we'll have some tables set up outside as well. And so far, the weather forecast for that evening looks mild in temperatures and partly sunny. We're doing food trucks again in lieu of a potluck community meal because the food trucks are still a bit safer with COVID-19 still floating around out there. As when we did this last summer, if you cannot afford a food truck, please let us know. We're going to have vouchers available for you. We don't want anyone to be shut out of eating with us because of money. That's just not how the church is supposed to work as the body of Christ. And Paul is really clear about that in 1 Corinthians 12. Anyway, also on Easter weekend, we're planning to have our annual Tenebrae Candlelight Remembrance of Good Friday. We're aiming as usual for that to be at 7:30 p.m., but some details have to be worked out just yet, so I'll keep you posted on that. Third thing, I am excited about a couple of things that are in the works here at GCF. And so just as COVID sent us into shutdown last spring, Ron Halp and a group of guys here at GCF were ready to host our first men's breakfast. I chatted with Ron again this week, a year later, and he is going to start working with that same team to host a men's breakfast, probably outside somewhere in May. And since vaccines are supposed to become broadly available to the public in May, we're still going to go outside to give ample time for all those folks who are going to get the vaccine to do so, or at least for as many as possible to do so. Similarly, Katie Ramsey had just started brainstorming ideas about a GCF women's gathering of some sort as the shutdown started last spring. And so a year later, she contacted me, and she and I have a meeting together next week to talk about what her dreams and visions are for some sort of occasional women's gatherings for our ladies here at GCF. I want to let you know we had an initial discussion at our Elder Council meeting last week about moving out of COVID regulations. Now, right now, there are some indicators that the strain of COVID from Great Britain is becoming the dominant form in some areas here in the U.S. And that strain, while apparently a bit less virulent, does spread much faster than the original strain. Unfortunately, early studies are showing that the 3 vaccines we have are not quite as effective with that strain, but they remain impressively effective. All 3 vaccines are also, as the studies show, impressively effective at preventing serious illness caused by COVID-19. Since the beginning of this thing, we have attempted to follow to the best of our ability the best practices recommended by the CDC and the Kentucky Department of Health while sustaining the life of our congregation. And we're going to continue to do that as we begin, hopefully, to move out of COVID-19 over these next 4 to 6 months. And here's something I think is really important for us to be aware of. For many of you, it was really difficult to begin physically distancing and wearing masks, and you probably felt that it was not necessary or that it was some kind of impingement upon your personal liberties. And for you guys, moving out of COVID with all of its regulations is going to be a lot easier than it was going into them. But for those of you who leapt at the safety protocols and saw it as your personal responsibility to wear masks, to physically distance and stay at home, it's important to remember that coming out of COVID may pose almost the same sorts of challenges to you as it did to those who did not want to wear masks and physically distance early on. And I mention that because I'm asking you once again to be patient as those of us in leadership here at GCF chart these decision-making waters. I said masks and physical distancing are not going to be around forever. Personally, it's my hope that as we move into the midsummer months, we're able to ease up on some of those practices. That said, we are not there just yet, so we'll keep on keeping on with what we have in place now. By the way, Kira and I go for our second COVID vaccine shots today. I'm also told that our pharmacy in Wilmore has received the first shipment of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And hey, that one is only 1 jab in the arm instead of 2. Well, after more than a year of having only 2, 3, or 4 people at our house, sometimes wearing masks, we were able to have our home more full of people without masks, about 12 or 15 of us last Sunday, and that was made possible by the fact that everyone there had had the vaccine. And it was so good to be together that way. So I tell you guys, better times are ahead of us, and we're going to get there. We're just not there quite yet. So you guys have a blessed rest of the Friday, a blessed Saturday.